Hi, everybody. My name is Heather Eyre, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm also the campaign coordinator for the ACLU of Kentucky. Welcome to our third Breaking Barriers event. This is an event we are hosting each month to raise awareness around a variety of topics that either directly impact or are impacted by reproductive health issues. Since June is traditionally Pride Month, we couldn't think of a better theme than Family's Family. During our Family's Family event tonight, you will hear from a variety of people who will talk about what their family looks like, the impact of families on children, and the importance of inclusivity when we talk to people about families. I grew up with a mom and dad at home. I have 2 older half-sisters and 5 nieces and nephews in total. A few of my nieces and nephews have lived with my parents and me for the past 15 years. I also grew up spending a lot of time with my Nana and Papa. They were and are a very important part of what I think of when I think about my family. And that's what makes a family so special. There's not one singular definition of what a family can or cannot be. A family can be anything we want, need, or wish it to be. A family can be connected by blood, but more than that, a family is connected by love. I currently live with my dog, Tony, who everyone at the ACLU of Kentucky has heard about many times. And to me, we are our own family. There are no bounds to what a family can be. You may have a biological family, adoptive family, chosen family, pet family, friend family, or maybe you are your own family. Each type of family is just as important and necessary as the rest. I hope you enjoy hearing from our panelists tonight and leave with a better understanding of the many different types of families represented here in our Commonwealth. I'm going to first introduce our panelists, and then they will take over the conversation from there. First up, we have Chris Hartman, who is the Executive Director of the Fairness Campaign here in Kentucky. In the past several years, Chris has helped quadruple the number of Kentucky cities with anti-discrimination LGBTQ fairness ordinances. Then we will have Xian Brooks. Xian is a DONA International trained doula, intersectional public health professional, and movement scientist. He completed his Bachelor's of Science in Public Health Education at North Carolina Central University and his Master's of Public Health in Community and Behavioral Health at the University of Colorado, Denver. Over time, he has amassed experience in queer, trans, and non-binary and gender non-conforming reproductive health education. We also have Michael Aldridge, who is the Executive Director of the ACLU of Kentucky. Michael began working on issues of justice and equality at the community level, doing volunteer work throughout college and then within the city of Louisville. He has taken on several leadership roles on nonprofits by serving on the Fairness Campaign, the Development Board for the Actors Theater of Louisville, and the ACLU Board of Directors. We also have Mashayla Hays, who is the moderator for our most recent Breaking Barriers event. Shay is a legal counsel for the Lawyering Project. She was a legal fellow with the ACLU of Kentucky and is dedicating her legal career to high-impact litigation that centers equal access to reproductive health care and advocating for reproductive justice policies on the state and federal levels. We also might have a representative from the Kentucky Youth Advocates, Aldridge, who will be talking about his experience in the foster care system and the impact of that on his life. Aldridge is a youth development trainer and coach and is affiliated with True Up and Sweet Evening Breeze. He's running a little late, but he might be able to join us later on. Now, Chris is going to start us off by talking about the history of the family unit.
The history of the family unit, as if I'm the best person to chat about that, but I'm delighted to join and to be here. My name is Chris Hartman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm Executive Director of the Fairness Campaign, where I've been for 12 and a half years. And I am excited to be here with you on the final day of Pride Month and the day after the 30th anniversary of the founding of the Fairness Campaign, which was announced at the June 29th, 1991 March for Justice, when 10 Louisvillians first introduced this organization to fight for LGBTQ rights and racial justice, first in Louisville and now all across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And this last day of Pride Month, we are squeezing every last drop out of it. Today, Governor Beshear, for the first time in Kentucky's history, officially proclaimed that June 2021 is Pride Month to honor LGBTQ people. And we received some important guidance from the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights that clarifies that they are implementing last year's Supreme Court ruling in Bostock v. Clayton County, Georgia, which means that if you experience discrimination in employment or housing here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky based on your sexual orientation or gender identity, you can file a complaint with the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, and they will investigate and enforce that. So it's a great day to be with you. I thought it's funny how things sort of cycle back around. My very first year at the Fairness Campaign, my first legislative session, we fought a bill targeting LGBTQ families in a similar way that we're experiencing that right now. Many folks are familiar with the ACLU case involving Alicia Pedrera and Sunrise Baptist Children's Services. It's become a hot topic on whether or not LGBTQ families should be allowed to be discriminated against in adoption and foster care that's funded by the Commonwealth of Kentucky right now. We face this year in the Kentucky General Assembly an anti-LGBTQ adoption bill that would target queer families. And I thought I'd share a very brief video and excerpt from my first legislative session, which gives you an idea of the challenges that we face in Frankfort. The Family Foundation that's featured in this video has not changed their definition of family and their pursuit of what they believe a family is in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And this is what the Kentucky General Assembly we face each year as legislators, arch conservative legislators, attempt to define for us who can and cannot be family.
And so, for better or for worse, you may disagree with what we believe is right, but we believe in the traditional family. There's no doubt about it. We supported the marriage amendment. There's no doubt about it.
And that's what this is about.
We believe that families do better and that children do better and societies do better as a whole when there's a married mom and dad, the two halves of humanity coming together to form a nest for those children in society.
Representative Moore, Stedman's, why did this?
And that right there is the type of incredibly narrow, sorry, I'll stop that now and stop sharing my screen. The incredibly narrow thinking that has dominated the culture in not just Kentucky's state capital, but in capitals all across the United States. And what we know, especially as queer folks, is that family truly is family and looks very different for everyone. I was excited to tell Jackie and Heather that this is the first time that my little known, never cited, and seldom read master's thesis could potentially come into use. This was titled Families of Choice, studying queer families in theater and on stage. And I thought I'd share just a few excerpts to highlight. Now, this is 15 years old here, but talking about where queer culture has had to embrace the idea that family is chosen, family is what we make of it. So it begins last year, an article in the magazine, The Advocate, began with the quote, "For months, Paula Jacquard watched her friend Mark fight AIDS and cancer, proving again that in queer culture, the family you rely on is truly the one that you make." And for many queer folks, the HIV and AIDS crisis elucidated this so much more than anything else. The isolation that queer folks find oftentimes in their families of birth, and that we had to rely on strong friendship networks and families of choice that we've created around ourselves to survive things like HIV and AIDS and the continued discrimination and oppression that we face. A couple more quotes from other experts and historians. This is from an Australian political scientist, Dennis Altman. "Both the lack of marriage and exclusion from the heterosexual world of conventional families tend to make friendship all the more important for LGBTQ people. They tend to highlight the significance of friendship among both gay men and women. Over the years, numbers of people have said to me that they place more importance on their friends than on their romantic partners. What many gay lives miss in terms of permanent relationships is more than compensated for by friendship networks, which often become de facto families. And this is something that not just queer communities, but all marginalized communities, that Black communities in America and Latinx communities in America and so many others have had to rely on broader, less, quote, traditional family units to provide the type of support that is often missing in marginalized communities at large. And so perhaps I'll leave you with an interesting thing that I learned in some of my research, particularly around queer families and queer identity and the emergence of queer families in America, was strangely thanks to the Industrial Revolution at large, where, and this is coming from work by historian John D'Amelio. He says, only when individuals began to make their living through wage labor instead of as parts of an interdependent family unit was it possible for LGBTQ desire to coalesce into a personal identity, an identity based on the ability to remain outside the heterosexual family unit and to construct a personal life based on one's LGBTQ identity. And so that continues today. While marriage is legal for LGBTQ folks now, the discrimination, the marginalization that we continue to face necessitates a stronger and broader chosen family structure than what folks would have considered the traditional nuclear family that gets shielded so much, but in reality is not the family that I think the vast majority of people experience. So I'm excited for folks to talk about their families. I should have said I'm an only child. I've got a mother and a father, and they've been very supportive and wonderful. And I know so many queer folks don't have that privilege. And so important to acknowledge that, and happy Pride, everyone.
All right, thanks, Chris. That was a great way to kind of start this segue. Hi, everybody. My name is Mashayla Hays. I do go by Shay, and I use she, they pronouns, which is really geared to what I'm here to talk to you all about tonight. We really want to take this time also to educate people during Pride Month, to take the time to go over definitions. If folks have questions, talk about what happens if you make a mistake with someone's pronouns. These are things that are really in the highlight of our world today. And I know that just like my mom and my parents, sometimes people have questions. And so we just want to take this time to also just educate folks so we can all get on the same page. As we talk about inclusivity of families, this is definitely one to also respect and accept others that you may meet who may be different from you. So first we have cisgendered. Cisgendered is a term used to describe someone whose gender identity aligns with those typically associated with the sex assigned to them at birth. So if you're cisgendered, and I guess the medical term, if you have like female, if you have the female anatomy and you identify as a woman, you are cisgendered. Then we have gender binary. And then that is a system in which gender is constructed into two strict categories of male or female. Gender identity is expected to be aligned with the sex assigned at birth, and gender expressions are roles fit traditional exceptions. And then we have gender dysphoria. So clinically significant distress caused by a person's assigned birth gender is not the same as the one in which they identify. So I'm going to be popping in and out through the rest of today, just to kind of give you all definitions. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, of course. And then I believe we're going to kick it off. Someone else is going to come in. I'm just going to come back and we'll give you all more information, more gems.
Yeah, now we're going to kick it over to Eltwan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eltwan Dawson. I am 26. 20 years ago, I and my 5 sisters were taken away from my biological mother for what the state of Kentucky labeled as neglect. After years of gathering details from family members involved and experienced professionals, I understand that these types of decisions are often made by social workers, perhaps to avoid liability issues, and doesn't speak directly to a parent's capability or capacity to be the parent they are or could have been. 250,000 children across the United States are placed into the foster care system every year. How do we break barriers and ensure all Kentuckians have the rights to do what's best for themselves and their families? How many families are being ripped apart rather than provided free and adequate resources and education that help to sustain the family in the home? We have been influenced by patterns of communications we experience in our families and decide which patterns we take into our future relationships. Our relationships are built off of foundations like trust, support, acknowledgement, honesty, and shared experiences, values, ethics, and morals. Family can be identified in different groups we associate with. These groups provide us with the empowerment, support, encouragement, and praise we often crave from one another. So there's my family, your family, their family, our family, rich families, poor families, church families, foster families, adoptive families, work families, family friends, friends that are family, and families in each neighborhood of our communities. While in the foster care system, I've had the opportunity to experience different environments. From foster home or residential facilities in between sometimes, I've been able to witness good and bad examples. And I have been able to also learn and decide to honor and carry certain values like honesty, faith, freedom, love, empowerment, and service to community with me in the future. I can't quite answer for you what family is, but I can reassure you that family is what you decide you want it to be. It is certain that I remain optimistic towards carrying values I've mentioned forward as I anticipate starting a family of my own one day soon. How can community organizations support families? Can't give you the answer to that either, but we all know that for the truest answer, we need to go directly to the source. Let's start asking our families what resources we need in our communities. Let's ask them what the access barriers are to existing resources. Let's begin focus groups where we ask these important questions answered by families impacted in the majority. Let's focus on family health and better education. Family is what you choose it to be. You have the right to make the best decisions for yourself. The truth is, we are never alone. Family is family, never perfect, but family is what you make it in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Eltwan. We really appreciate you being here and sharing that with us. We're gonna pop back over to Mashayla Hays, and she's gonna go over a few more terms with us.
Class tonight, and I feel like a teacher tonight. So I wonder if this is how my professor feels. Okay, so we're gonna go back. We're gonna do some more terms. We're gonna pull up the PowerPoint. Give us 1 second. Okay, so first we have non-binary, which is often gender non-binary. So it's an adjective describing a person who doesn't identify exclusively as a male or a woman. Non-binary people may identify as being both male and a woman, man and woman, sorry, somewhere in between or falling completely outside of those categories. While many also identify as transgender, not all non-binary people do so. Non-binary can also be used as an umbrella term encompassing identities such as agender, bigender, genderqueer, or gender fluid. And then we have sex assigned at birth. So the sex, male, female, or intersex, that a doctor or midwife uses to describe a child at birth based on their external anatomy. So I think those are pretty self-explanatory. So we'll keep going. We have transgender, and it's an umbrella term for people who identify and or have a gender expression that is different from cultural expressions based on sex that they were assigned at birth. Being transgender does not imply any specific sexual orientation. Therefore, transgender people may identify as straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, etc. And then transitioning. It's a series of processes that some transgender people may undergo in order to live more fully as they fully encompass their true identity. This typically includes social transitions, such as changing their name and their pronouns, medical transition, which may include hormone therapy or gender affirming surgeries, and then legal transition, which often includes changing their legal name and sex on government documents. Transgender people may choose to undergo some or all or none of these processes, but it's important for, I think, all of us to just know what that process is like for them. All right, I'll pass it back over and come back later.
Next, we get to hear from Xian Brooks, so go for it.
Hello, my name is Xian Brooks. As Heather mentioned earlier, I do a lot of different things. Currently, I'm a community birth doula. I'm also a master's level nursing student with the goal of being a certified nurse midwife. So all that to say is I'm a queer Black birth worker, which I think is kind of rare in general, especially I think within the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And so, you know, in doing the kind of work that I do, it's really important, you know, to recognize that families look all different kinds of ways, and more importantly, not only to recognize it, but to embody that, you know, in a better way to be able to provide support for those families. So with that said, you know, like I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, by a single mother who is no longer with us. I have one brother who is 7 years younger than me. And, you know, was ultimately raised and conditioned as what society would consider as female, and now navigate, you know, the world and spaces as a, you know, masculine and male identified individual. I was also raised, I don't know how many of you all listening or, you know, on the panel, you know, with the term, you know, blood is thicker than water. You know, like we were raised with that was kind of like hammered, you know, into us. And so the older I got, the more I began to question that, really. And I'm glad that I did, because the actual, you know, quote is that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And so, you know, meaning that, you know, the family and the individuals that we choose to be in our life are and can be actually better than the people that we were actually born to. And so, you know, for me, you know, my family, you know, looks like, you know, my partner, we have 3 dogs and 5 cats. You know, it looks like my host, you know, friends who, and not even friends, it's like family that stepped up for me, you know, when my mom died and when, you know, my biological family really showed their true colors. You know, so like for me, like that is family. And I, you know, value those people, you know, highly. My partner and I are starting to grow our family. You know, so what that looks like is, you know, like going on this like fertility journey, you know, which unfortunately can be like very cost prohibitive to a lot of LGBTQ folks. And, you know, like we're incredibly privileged and supported, you know, to be able to do that. We're also foster parents. And so it was very, you know, I really appreciate it, you know, hearing Eltwan's, you know, story and, you know, getting to see that, you know, for, you know, where we've got a system that, you know, is not capable of recognizing the structural competence, like the systemic oppression that leads to families not being able to be kept together, you know, by a system that doesn't really like understand all the various things that, you know, provide barriers. And at the same time, you know, recognizing the system that, you know, they value that misnomer, quote, blood is thicker than water. So, you know, oftentimes seeing, you know, children yanked out of the foster care system and put back with a family just because they're family. And that I think especially happens, unfortunately and disproportionately, to a lot of Black children and trans children and lesbian and gay children. So yeah, we're also like on the goal of like the road of being an adoptive parent. So yeah, like I think I definitely embody family looks all different kinds of ways, and like all of those ways are valid and real.
Thank you so much, Xian. That's a great perspective, and we also really appreciate you joining us tonight. So we are going to pop back over, lots of popping. We're going to pop back over to Shay, and she's going to go over our last set of terms with us. She's going to be our teacher.
Okay, last set. These are going to be fun. Let's go. Okay, first term is ally. Totally respected. I like to challenge this and say co-conspirator for multiple reasons. First, because allyship is very, very safe. People like saying that they're ally when they want to like be supportive, but allyship, if this was the issue, allyship is like all the way over here and sometimes out of view, because you can be an ally but not actually be in the movement and be helping folks actually achieve the successes and fulls of life that they want to. A co-conspirator, much like the criminal term, means they're like in it. They're in it with you. They are down to ride. And so I really like to challenge that. But the term and what it means is really the same. It's a term used to describe someone who is actively supportive for LGBTQ folks. And it encompasses everybody, anybody who wants to come in and help explore what it's like to really support something that is truly meaningful and endearing to everyone and make sure that everybody is living their full lives. We also have asexual. So we'll start talking about some different sexualities, which again, I want to remind people are different from gender and gender expressions, okay? So we have asexual, and that is the lack of a sexual attraction or desire for other people. It's real. Some folks out here are asexual, respect it. We have bisexual. So that's a person emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to more than one sex or gender identity. And it's the same degree, sometimes used interchangeably with pansexual. Next, we have, we'll see, try to move this. Next, we have gay, which I feel like typically when folks like to talk about LGBTQ rights, this is the umbrella term, but again, this is why we're doing this so that folks can really be inclusive. So someone who identifies as gay is a person who is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to members of the same gender. Men, women, and non-binary people may use this term to describe themselves. We have homophobia, that is the fear and hatred or discomfort with people who are attracted to members of the same sex. Well, we are constantly working against all the time, all day, every day. We have intersex. So intersex describes people who are born with a variety of differences in their sex traits and reproductive anatomy. There is a wide variety of differences among intersex variations, including differences in genitalia, chromosomes, internal sex organs, hormone production, all the things. But I think also that it's really important to remember that when folks say LGBTQ+, that plus sign often includes and does include intersex folks. They are out here living their best lives. So it is a real thing, people. Next, we have lesbian. So a woman who is emotionally, romantically, and sexually attracted to other women. Women and non-binary people may use this term to describe themselves as well. Then we also, of course, here's the umbrella term, the LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. Remember the plus, AI, intersex, asexual. Then there's this term called outing. So exposing someone's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or gender non-binary identity to others without their permission. Big no-no. Outing someone can have serious repercussions on employment, economic stability, personal safety, or religious and family situations. It's always important to allow someone's gender and sexuality to be their gender and sexuality. If you ever think that you might want to talk to someone about someone else's gender and sexuality, I can very much affirm you that you probably should not. That is on them, that is their lives, and they should be free to talk to and expose and present their side of their life to folks that they choose. So, just be a good friend. Everybody knows how to keep a secret, okay? Next, we have pansexual. So pansexual describes someone who has the potential for emotional, romantic, or sexual attractions to people of any gender, though not necessarily simultaneously in the same degree or same way. Sometimes used interchangeably with bisexual, which we talked about earlier. We have queer, yes, all the queer folks, a term often used to express a spectrum of identities and orientations that are counter to mainstream. Queer is often used as a catch-all to include many people, including those who do not identify as exclusively straight and or folks who have non-binary or gender expansiveness identities. This term was previously used as a slur. I'm sure lots of folks have at least heard the history of the term queer at some point, but has been reclaimed by many parts of the LGBTQ movement. And then we have questioning. So a term used to describe someone who's in the process of exploring their sexuality and sexual orientation and gender identity. And these are going to be our last terms for the night. So same gender loving is a term some prefer to use instead of lesbian, gay, or bisexual to express their attraction to and love for someone of the same gender. And then sexual orientation is an inherent or immutable, enduring, emotional, romantic, and sexual attraction to other people. Please note, an individual's sexual orientation is independent of their gender identity.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Aldridge. I'm the executive director of the ACLU of Kentucky. I'm also a 50-year-old gay man. So when I was growing up, most people weren't out of the closet. There were no protections. You could lose your job, you could lose your home, you could be ostracized from family and friends. And in fact, that's what happened all too often. And when I was in college, the first people to ever come out on my campus came out while I was there. And they were thrown out of their fraternities and sororities, and they were hazed, and they had things, slurs spray painted on their dorm room doors. It did not encourage other people to come out and didn't foster a supportive environment at all. But we've come a long way since those days. But because of growing up when I did, I really kind of had low expectations of a relationship, much less a family. Friends really became a real family to me. And through my work, I was able over the years to help change that landscape for LGBT people, helping to expand those rights and visibility. One of the great things about being part of the LGBT community, though, was that it exposed you to families of all types. Many people never sought legal validation of their relationship, nor did they want that validation. They weren't seeking marriage or to conform to the heterosexual norm. For many people, family consists of close friends. They're also just single parents. They're also non-romantic co-parenting couples, polyamorous relationships, just general couples or same-sex couples with children, which started to become more and more visible about 20 years ago here in the Commonwealth. But over the years, the world really began to open up. There was greater visibility and an expansion of those rights for all of us. Eventually, I got to the point where I was ready for a relationship and started dating. I met Matt through work. Our agencies worked together. I thought he was cute. One night I ran into him while I was out and about. I flirted, I got in contact, and soon we were dating. But his life was really so different from mine. My parents had been married and divorced 7 times between them. A lot. My parents had been divorced a lot. His parents had been married since 1961. I have one sibling that I'm friendly with. He has 6 siblings who are his best friends. I grew up really poor. He grew up stable and middle class. His family is really close. The importance of family was ingrained in them from an early age. They were close to their cousins, and the grandkids were all actually very close, even though they lived in different states, because the family was really intentional about creating those bonds across generations. You know, Matt had always assumed he'd have a family because he knew family in a way that I didn't. But as our relationship deepened, you know, I got to meet his family. I'd love to say that everything went perfectly. But while they were kind to me, they were still dealing with Matt's sexuality. They'd never experienced a gay couple before, and it took time for them to treat our relationship on the same footing as they did as siblings. But I'm so great that they came to love me and validate our relationship. You know, while my mom was always supportive growing up, she's a pretty progressive woman. My dad is a Southern Baptist minister, and he still doesn't recognize my relationship to this day. But through Matt, I became part of a bigger family, and I changed my perspective a lot. I finally felt like I could have what I'd never dreamed of in my youth. You know, after 5 years, we were married, and it was a year before the nationwide marriage equality hit the nation. So we were one of the first LGBT couples in Kentucky to take that step. Matt had also always envisioned himself as a father. And again, you know, that was a leap for me. I'd never really thought about that possibility that we might be able to be parents one day. We ended up looking into all the options on how to grow our family and ultimately decided to foster, to adopt. And let me tell you, it was hard. It was very difficult. The little boy we fostered was broken. He'd been in 7 homes in 3 years. He didn't trust anybody, and he didn't want to be in our home. He wanted to be with his birth parents, but that wasn't possible. We went on a roller coaster for over 2 years of trying to help Caleb work through his trauma and to support him as much as we could, trying to model the values we hoped to instill in him long term. Therapy helped, but Caleb had to want to move forward with us and to trust us. And luckily, eventually he did. Now we have the most beautiful life you could imagine. We have 2 dads and a son and a dog named Cookie. We're supported by an extended family of in-laws. We have 35 grandkids in our family and a wonderful network of friends who all play a part in Caleb's life. And in a lot of ways, you know, our family really looks pretty traditional, all except for the same-sex couple part. But the foundation for it is, I think, the same as all the stories you've heard about tonight. It begins with love. It requires support. It requires work. And it takes a commitment to building something bigger than yourself. But that can look 1,000 different ways. And in the end, family is family.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was a great story that you shared, and I really appreciate you being willing to share that with us. We are going to go over to Shay one last time, and she's going to let us know what to do if we make a mistake or if we use the wrong pronouns for someone, or because you know we all make mistakes. So Shay's going to fill us in on that.
Yep, I'm here. It's my last time I'm gonna pop in for the night. I was looking for like the emojis. I couldn't hit the emojis when folks have been presenting. But again, so my name is Shay. I use she, they pronouns again, and identify as queer. And it's been a very interesting road, even for me, when you grow up in such a heteronormative world that just kind of teaches you one way to view the world, to view how you think about yourself. It's been interesting, and it's been a challenging moment for sure. But of course, we're going to talk about pronouns for a little bit. We're going to talk about what it means to be a good person, to hold yourself accountable, and to truly support people as they explore themselves and how they want to identify. So my first actual interaction with someone who used different pronouns was in 2018. I met someone who used they, them pronouns. And let me tell you, I messed up a lot. And not because I wanted to, not because it was intentional, but again, when you grow up and all you learn is she, her, you know, he, him, even to the point to where we're giving genders to our car, including myself. My car's name is Grace. I will not change her name. But it just makes you realize how gendered we are and how stuck we can be in just the ways in which we were taught, and how much we just need to expand our own horizons. So I made mistakes. And for the first couple of times, that person gave me grace and corrected me. But then after a while, it fell on me. It falls on you to hold yourself accountable and to let people feel affirmed in knowing that you recognize that you made the mistake and that you can own up to it and correct it yourself. So one of the first things I like to tell people just in general is ask people what their pronouns are. I love it. And I can promise you that someone who has different pronouns will love it as well. There's nothing wrong with asking, how do they identify? And then proceeding from there and saying, okay, and let them know like where you are. I think it's good to just have open dialogue and conversation about where you are, how you're, going to hold yourself accountable, let them know that you're intentional about trying. But then, like I said, after the first few times, it's going to be a group effort. You'll start to catch yourself and that'll be fine. And you'll correct yourself and all of those things. But then sometimes you might be like me, even though I use different pronouns and I have friends that use different pronouns, even we mess up with each other at times. And it's all about stopping and correcting yourself. I don't want people to feel ashamed or bad if they don't pick it up right away, but it does take some intention. It takes true intention to really move past the normative ways in which you were taught. And to just think about it in ways, because I know when folks have asked me, even like you use she, they, so which ones, I don't know, like which one am I supposed to use? And I said, well, what does the sentence look like? I mean, it's really about grammar, which if folks are like me too, I wasn't that great at grammar until a couple of months ago. But yeah, so when you just think about grammar. So one, if you don't know someone, if someone's name is Aaron, which we know Aaron could be someone who identifies as male or female or non-binary for this particular occasion. The first thing you should say is, of course, how do they identify? But if you don't ask that and you don't know who Aaron is, you don't know what Aaron looks like, you don't know how to identify, what are you going to say? They, because that's what you were taught in school. We use it all the time. We're just taught to use it in group settings, but that is the alternative for when you don't use she, her, or he, him. So at least for me, if it's, she went for a walk on the beach, that's correct. But you're not going to say that's hers. You'll say that's theirs. So you really have to be just a little bit intentional. It is a lot of grammar I think it is just really grammar in a sense to learn how to structure a sentence, but really it's all about just being supportive. Like I said, I met someone who used different pronouns. It was my very first time in 2018. And by the time 2020 came, I was like, you know what? I'm changing my pronouns because it's just not me. And so it's all about being expansive. I think one of the things that you can always do to offer someone is to really own up to the mistake. I also use she, they pronouns because I want folks to be able to practice. One of the things that I was taught to kind of help me to just kind of grasp using different pronouns was to really practice with people close to me. So I asked friends and things like, hey, I'm going to practice on you. I'm going to use you as an example. Some people use their dog, their cat, or whatever it is, but it's really a great way to just train your brain to think differently and to not be in this box about what it means to have a pronoun and how to use it. And so it's been great, of course. So my family, of course, it used to be small. It used to just be me, my mom, and my siblings. And then we took in foster siblings. One of my foster siblings is LGBTQ. And so it's been interesting just going through the changes of life. And I think when we talk about how family is family, love is love, support is support. And to let someone know that you support them in that process, to know that you want to be involved, that you want to be that co-conspirator, that you are down to ride, to be their ride or die, and to just continue to learn with them, I think is a beautiful thing. It's one thing that we should all remember, that we're growing every day. And so every day you're going to learn something different. Every day you should be looking for ways to challenge yourself. And so I really hope that this was helpful. If folks do have questions, of course, I'm here to answer them. But the main thing about making a mistake is just owning up to it. It means so much for you to catch yourself and to not have to allow the other person to correct it for you. Let us take some of that burden off of them. And really show them that they have the support, they have people who care and really want to be standing beside them as we continue to move for a true LGBTQ equality in this world.
Thank you so much, Shay. That was really informative, and I'm sure a lot of people really appreciate you sharing your experience and being vulnerable in what to do when you make a mistake. I don't think everyone who's watching can see, but Xian, not to put you on the spot, just picked up his cat and is holding it like a child. So truly, family can be everything.
I just want to clarify. I don't know if I picked him up so much as like he made me pick him up.
Yeah. Again, very similar to a human child, which is wonderful. But I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us tonight, not only to our attendees on Zoom and on Facebook, but also all of the panelists. This has been wonderful. I cannot say how much I appreciate you all taking the time to prepare for this, reading all my emails I sent you, and then taking the time to be a part of this tonight. It has been a really, really fun and informative time. So you can get involved with the ACLU of Kentucky by going to our website and signing up through the volunteer form. Jackie put in the chat the volunteer form as well. If you don't want to go to our website, you can fill it out there in the chat. If you want to get involved with the Fairness Campaign, Chris put his website in the chat as well. Get involved in both, or you can choose whichever one, but like definitely do both. Be sure to keep an eye out for our next Breaking Barriers event. It'll be coming in July, and you can find out more about future Breaking Barriers events through the ACLU of Kentucky Facebook page or on our website. And again, just thank you all so much, and I hope that you all enjoyed this as much as I did. So have a good night.
Happy Pride, last day.
Happy Pride.